If you've read or watched or listened to pretty much anything about cooking, you've undoubtedly heard someone, probably a lot of people, say that fat is flavor. But what does that mean? And is it even true? After poring over the science, I can definitively say yes, but also no. This is Minute Food. Okay, so there are 4 main pathways through which fat and flavor interact. The simplest is that fat itself has flavor. Scientists debate whether or not fat is a taste in its own right, like sour, bitter, salty, sweet, and umami. But in any case, fats naturally contain flavor molecules. Slurp a little extra virgin olive oil and you'll get grassy, citrusy, nutty, even soapy flavors. Lick a bit of butter and you'll sense creaminess, nuttiness, maybe a little funkiness. So when you add fat to, say, some green beans, you're also adding flavor. Second, fat also creates flavor through heat. First, in the fat itself. When fat gets hot, the chain-like molecules it's made of, called fatty acids, react with oxygen atoms, breaking down the chains and creating new flavor compounds that didn't initially exist in the fat. Animal fats, which contain a lot of unbound fatty acids that react easily with oxygen, seem to be especially prone to pumping out these new compounds. But any fat will do it. Fat also creates new flavors in other foods. Since fat is such a good conductor of heat, it helps heat from a hot pan connect with food in the pan. And since fat can get really hot, way hotter than, say, water, it can help food reach high enough temperatures for flavor-generating chemical reactions, like caramelization and the Maillard reaction, to happen. So by cooking something in fat, you're producing totally new flavors, both in the fat and on the food itself. Third, fat extracts flavor. Most aromatic compounds that help impart flavor to food, are lipophilic. They like to interact with fat. So say you roast some fat-slicked potatoes with some smashed garlic and thyme. The allicin in the garlic and the thymol in the thyme will disperse through the fat. Now you don't need to bite into a garlic clove or a thyme leaf to get those flavors. The fat is imparted with them. Finally, fat delivers flavor. Because water doesn't mix all that well with fat, saliva isn't that effective at washing fatty foods off the surfaces of our mouth. So the flavorful molecules in these foods have more time to meet up with our taste buds or our olfactory system before getting swallowed. So yeah, fat contributes to flavor in all sorts of ways. That's one reason it's really hard to make low-fat food super flavorful. But you also can't blindly rely on fat to boost flavor either, since sometimes these pathways can backfire. Some fats, like refined vegetable oils, have actually had the flavorful compounds stripped out to create a neutral base for cooking stuff. And considering the huge range of different flavors in other fats, you need to pick the right fat for what you're making. That's even more important if you're using heat, because while cooking with fat can help create new flavors, heat can also diminish existing flavors. For example, the delicate grassy flavors in your extra virgin olive oil will break down at high temps. So think carefully about what flavors you're going for, whether the recipe involves heat, and what that heat will do to the flavors you want to cultivate. Then choose and use your fat accordingly. But also be careful with how much fat you use, because too much fat can actually dull flavor. See, aromatic compounds are generally aromatic because they aren't very attracted to the water in food. As you cook or chew, they tend to fly into the air where you can sense them. But distribute those compounds in fat, which they love to associate with, and they're less prone to going airborne. Too much fat can completely stop these compounds from getting released and getting sensed at all. And one final warning about fat's propensity to pick up flavors. They're just as likely to pick up flavors you don't want. Fry fish, and the oil will extract fishy flavored molecules, so you might not want to use it again. Store butter or milk uncovered, and they'll soak up various aromatic compounds bouncing around in your fridge. So be careful, because while I'm all for flavor, leftover scented butter usually isn't what I'm going for.